Okay, as I assume you've noticed, there's not really an intro to this video, and I'm not gonna be editing in any edits like jump cuts or anything like that. This is just gonna be a straight, unedited video of me basically saying what I think about the movie. I had a friend to help me edit the last two videos I did, and I just want to do this really quick review right after seeing the movie, so I'm not gonna have time to ask him to help me edit it. But I didn't like this movie. I'd go so far as to say I hate it. It's not well written. I went to see this with a friend of mine, and the first thing he said after we left the theater was he looked at me and he said, "Wow, that movie had a lot of plot holes." And I was like, "Yes, it most certainly had a lot of plot holes." And I mean, this movie, there really are noticeable things, noticeable problems in the plot. There are things which contradict each other. I spent a lot of this movie just looking at the screen like I can't believe that there are like this many sort of mistakes in the plot happening. It feels like you really should have gone over this script one more time before you started filming the movie, because there are just things which blatantly contradict themselves, and I'll get into that in spoilers. There's one big one which I noticed, which just kept annoying me through the whole. After I noticed it, it just kept annoying me. But I'd say the quality of the writing of this movie, if this wasn't a Star Wars movie, I'd say I wouldn't hate it. I wouldn't like it, and I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. I felt bored for a large part of this movie, and I just didn't enjoy it. So it's not enjoyable no matter how I look at it. But if it wasn't a Star Wars movie, if it weren't for the fact that it blatantly contradicts previous lore set up in the Star Wars universe, if it weren't for the fact that it blatantly disrespects previous character arcs in previous movies, if it weren't for all that, I wouldn't actively dislike it. So I guess that's a point for the movie, is if you weren't a Star Wars movie, I wouldn't hate you. I just wouldn't care about you. I feel like I wouldn't feel anything more negative to you than, well, that was a waste of my time. I guess that's all I really have to say about it that doesn't go into spoilers. So from here on, I'm just going to be talking spoiler stuff. So be warned if you haven't seen the movie yet. Don't I really would just say don't see it. I really would just say don't see it. Don't Spoilers don't matter. You shouldn't see it. I really just do not like this movie at all. Anyway, on to spoilers. Big thing is, just like I was afraid of, and I talked about in my last video, this movie real does entirely disrespect Anakin's arc. They bring back Palpatine. They do not bring back Anakin. Anakin is not the one who ends up killing Palpatine in this. I don't know how they do that, considering we know for a fact he's dead. He's a Force ghost. They'd have to find some way to explain that. You have to, but so really, there's no good way to do this. I think I said it in my last video. I don't know if I said it in my last video or not. Either way, bring back Palpatine. There's automatically, in my eyes, no good way to finish this story. The best way you can do it is by having Anakin be the one who defeats him somehow, but at that point, you've got to figure out a reason to have Anakin's Force Ghost be able to kill Palpatine. So, no good solution to this. But there was a solution, an obvious solution. Find some way to have Anakin be the one who kills Palpatine. You don't have to completely sideline Rey. You can have Rey contribute to it. I don't have a problem with Rey being instrumental in Palpatine's fall. It just has to be Anakin who ends up finishing the job. Because that is because one, if anyone else kills Palpatine, that just takes away from Anakin's arc. Like I said in the previous video, one of the most powerful parts of Anakin's death in Return of the Jedi is the fact that he gives up his life to destroy the man who brought him down into darkness. He overcomes darkness, the darkness in him, and he overcomes the man who put him in that darkness in the first place. That's one of the things that's so resonant about the end of his arc. And the other important thing is having anyone besides Anakin kill Palpatine makes them the chosen one. And this movie doesn't really acknowledge the chosen one myth. There is one moment when Rey is about to kill Palpatine when you can hear a bunch of previous Jedi talking to her through the Force, which I did like that. I heard Qui-Gon in there. I heard Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon in there. I heard Alec Guinness and Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan. I heard Yoda. You heard Hayden Christensen as Anakin, and they did sort of acknowledge the chosen one thing. I couldn't quite make out what Anakin said to her through the Force, but he said something along the lines of, "You've got to bring balance to the Force the way I once did." So they are acknowledging the whole prophecy of bringing balance to the Force in some way, but it doesn't really make sense how they acknowledge it. It sounds like they're trying to have it both ways. They're saying, well, Rey is about to balance the Force by killing Palpatine, but that doesn't take away from what Anakin did because he also balanced the Force, but I don't know how that works considering this movie makes it clear that Palpatine just survived. This isn't a deal of him like dying and coming back to life or anything. It doesn't actually explain why he's still alive. It doesn't explain how he survived blowing up after he fell down that Death Star shaft, because he explodes into that like big blue storm or whatever. It looked out and like that big blue explosion that came up. It doesn't explain how he survived that. It doesn't explain how he survived the Death Star exploding around him. None of that is explained. It just literally says in the opening title crawl for this movie that Palpatine is back. And there's never an explanation for how it happened. And I think that comes down to some of the reshoots that were happening. I know it was a big deal when right before this movie came out. This movie was still filming reshoots and scenes up to the first week of December, which is way, way later than any movie should ever be filming. I know that no movie should still be filming scenes 2 weeks before it's supposed to come out. Like, that's not a good sign. And I think maybe that comes down to it because I know there were some early leaks that came out claiming that the reason Palpatine is alive in this movie is because the Palpatine Vader killed in episode 6 was not the Palpatine, it was a clone of Palpatine, and that I know that blew up on the internet. People really didn't like that. I know I didn't like it. But so maybe that's why there's no explanation, because they literally just cut out the explanation because it was so controversial. People reacted to it so poorly. So they decided, well, if they don't like the explanation, we're just not going to explain it, which obviously is not a good alternative. I would say come up with a better explanation, or just don't bring back Palpatine. But obviously at that point it was too late. But yeah, I went off on a bit of a tangent there. But yeah, it's now Rey is the chosen one, I guess. They try to make it sound like she and Anakin can both sort of share the title of balance, can both sort of share the title of being the one who brings balance to the Force, but I don't see how that works. Anakin failed to kill Palpatine. Rey succeeded. She was the one who destroyed the Sith, so now she's just the chosen one. And all of that build-up we got for Anakin's importance in the prequel trilogy, in that spectacular payoff we got to both the foreshadowing of the chosen one arc in the prequel trilogy and just his character arc in general in Return of the Jedi. Now both of those things have been undercut and given to Rey. Well, not his story arc. Technically, she just steals his kill and his chosen one status. She doesn't get his arc. So that's a big problem I have with a big sort of FU to the lore behind Star Wars, which is a big part of why I don't like this movie. It's like I said, this movie is just kind of bad if it's not a Star Wars movie, but as a Star Wars movie, it feels insulting to all the stuff it comes after. One more big contradiction that I just want to note before I actually get into the meat of this movie, because this movie, again, is not good on its own, but I want to get into one more thing it contradicts about previous lore, which pissed me off. and I read about this in the leaks. I prayed that it wasn't true, but it is. There's a scene where Luke Skywalker's Force Ghost literally catches his lightsaber in the air and brings it to Rey. So we're establishing. Oh, and he uses the Force to lift an X-wing, to lift his X-wing out of the water. She's on that Jedi Temple planet Octu from Last Jedi. He uses the Force to lift up the X-wing he used to get there, so that she can fly off the island. It's a long story for why she's there. I'll get into that later. But he picks up a lightsaber with his hand as a ghost, and he uses the Force to lift up an X-wing. We know in The Last Jedi, Yoda's Force Ghost literally summoned lightning down to burn that tree that the sacred Jedi texts were in. So we've established Force Ghosts can use Force lightning. Force Ghosts can move stuff just like all Jedi can with the Force. Force Ghosts can pick up lightsabers. So if Force Ghosts can do all of this, why haven't they been doing anything? Qui-Gon Jinn has literally been a Force Ghost since the Phantom Menace. He's been a Force Ghost for, gosh, like around 50 years. And Force Ghosts can't die. They're already dead. They're immortal. So what do they have to fear? Why is Qui-Gon's Force Ghost, Obi-Wan's Force Ghost, Yoda's Force Ghost, Mace Windu's, he was one of the voices Rey heard, so apparently he's a Force Ghost now. Why didn't Mace Windu? Who else? What was in there? Ahsoka. She was another voice that they heard, which this movie apparently confirms that Ahsoka is dead. If you only watch the Star Wars movies, and you don't know who I'm talking about, but if you watch the Star Wars TV shows, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's not a big deal. Anyway, I'm gonna stick to the big ones. Qui-Gon, and by big ones I mean the ones that people will know off the top of their head. Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, Yoda, Mace Windu, Anakin, that's a big one. They can all pick up lightsabers, use Force lightning apparently, even though that's a Sith ability. Or maybe Yoda wasn't using Force lightning, he was just somehow controlling the weather to call down, like, I don't know, Last Jedi is really bad too. But they can use the Force. They can do everything that living Jedi can. The only difference between them and a living Jedi is that they can't die anymore. So I don't understand why they're not doing anything. And I brought this up to a friend because all of this was in leaks. I read about the rise of Skywalker, and I brought this up to a friend, and he tried to argue to me, well, maybe it's sort of this deal where Force ghosts have sort of come to peace with what's going on. So like they're sort of Zen. I don't know. They've reached nirvana or something as Buddhists or whatever, so they don't really care about the physical plane anymore, so they have a policy of not getting involved. But that doesn't jive with any of the original movies either, because Yoda and Obi-Wan in the original trilogy actively try to convince Luke to kill Darth Vader because they want Darth Vader gone, because Darth Vader and the Emperor are oppressing the galaxy. The Force Ghosts have a very clear interest in destroying the Sith. And according to what we knew in the original trilogy, the reason they're not doing anything themselves is because they can't do anything. They're just ghosts. They can live forever, but they can't physically interact with the world around them, which is why they have to convince Luke to go out there and do the job for them, because they're no longer able to. But now, according to this movie, they could have. At any point, any one of these Jedi who is a Force ghost now and can't die could have gone out and just killed Darth Vader and the Emperor. Any one of them could have done it, and they never would have been in any danger. So congratulations, guys. You sent Luke out there. He lost his hand. I mean, to be fair, they did tell him not to go to Cloud City because he wasn't ready for it. But he sent Luke out there. Luke almost fell to the dark side because of the Emperor tempting him in the second Death Star. At any point, you could have gone in there with a lightsaber and just like sliced the Emperor up. You could have sliced Darth Vader up. You guys weren't in any danger. You live forever. But no, you just sit by and you say, Luke, you're the one who's got to do it. Luke, you've got to destroy the Emperor. You've got to do all of this stuff for us. It's like, why can't you? Qui-Gon, what have you been doing for the past 50 years? Have you just been sitting around, like, watching Anakin, like, go around just destroy the galaxy? Come on, Qui-Gon, you're the one who convinced the Jedi to train Anakin. don't you want to like go out there and sort of put a stop to what Anakin's doing? Or don't you feel like maybe you're a bit responsible for all of this stuff Anakin is doing because you're the one who convinced Obi-Wan and the Jedi Council to train him? I can't. I'm actually getting madder and madder about thinking about this as we go. Anyway, those are the two big things about this, like contradictions in this movie with previous canon that I just can't stand. The way they handle Force ghosts and the way they just take away Darth Vader's kill. I hate that. I can't stand that. Anyway, let me talk about the actual writing in the movie, and I'm gonna be positive for a minute because there is one thing in this movie that like I liked. There were a couple of things in this movie that like I have positive feelings for. Kylo Ren is one of them. I think Kylo's probably the closest thing to a good character, like in the main cast of this trilogy has. I wish he kind of got messed up in Last Jedi. I feel like his story arc kind of got lost a bit in Force Awakens. It was obviously setting up that he was conflicted and that he wasn't really bad. He was just sort of trying to convince himself he was. And so I thought the sort of trajectory of this series, of this trilogy, would be him redeeming himself. But then Last Jedi, he kills his master and just becomes supreme leader of the First Order, and then literally tries to kill his mother and all the resistance people still left. He goes just about as far evil as you can possibly go. And then in this movie, his redemption arc just comes back and he redeems himself. I think there's a lot going. I think the reason I like Kylo a bit more than anyone else in this trilogy is because he's got the most going on. He's got the most clear arc. The problem is you've got that arc in Force Awakens and Rise of Skywalker, but then right there in the middle is Last Jedi, just like throwing his arc like completely for a loop. So he sort of suffers from that, but I mean, there's something there. I can feel like in the depths of my heart, I can feel like a tiny part of me desperately trying to like Kylo, but his character's got a lot of problems too, which is how I feel about a lot of this movie. Like there are certain things in this movie which I want to like and kind of do like, but the problem is they've all got different issues with them. But there is one thing in this movie which didn't have an issue, which I really like. There's a character in this movie in the First Order named General Pride. I don't remember what his rank was, but I know his name's Pride. He's played by an actor named Richard E. Grant. And I really liked him. He really reminded me of Grand Moff Tarkin from A New Hope. There's a great scene with him where it's established in the movie that there is a mole in the First Order, and it's revealed to be Hux, the redhead guy from the previous two movies. And he helps the main characters escape after they get captured at one point, and he has them shoot him in the leg so that it'll look like he got hurt trying to stop them, so that he can keep his cover in the First Order, so that he can keep spying for them. But then when he goes to report to Pride, he reports to him like, "Hey, I got injured. I tried to stop them. I got injured. Like you can see the wound I have." And Pride's like, all right. And then he just takes a gun and shoots Hux and just kills him right there. And then he just turns to another officer like, tell the Supreme Leader that we found our mole. And I was like, that's a guy who like gets stuff done. Like I get that he's a bad guy and I'm not rooting for him, but I was like, that is a good character to have for the First Order, because like he gets stuff done. He's no nonsense. He's smart. He immediately saw through Hux's lie. Like that is a smart guy right there. And so I really liked Pride. He's not in the movie a lot. The one thing in this movie I like is something that's not in there a lot. Maybe that's why I like him. This movie didn't have enough time to do something stupid with him. But talking about plot holes, one of the biggest ones has to do with Chancellor Palpatine, with Darth Sidious. And it's not just the fact that it doesn't explain how he's still alive, how he somehow survived 2 explosions and he's still just there. A big contradiction is, at the beginning of the movie opens up with Kylo looking for Palpatine, because it's established in the opening crawl that Palpatine sent out like a transmission to let people know he's alive again, and Kylo's looking for him to kill him because he doesn't want like his status as supreme ruler to be threatened. So he's going out there looking for Palpatine, and he finds where Palpatine is, and he talks with Palpatine, and Palpatine convinces him to help him. He says, Palpatine shows him, I've got this big fleet, I've got this huge fleet, and it'll all be yours if you go out and kill Rey, because if she's dead, then the Jedi are gone for good. And so he's like, all right, I'll do it. I don't know why Kylo just trusts him to give this fleet to him after he does what he says. I feel like Darth Sidious should be pretty well known in the galaxy, especially to Kylo, since he's sort of a Sith fanboy. But for some reason, he seems to just believe Sidious will keep his word. But all right then. But so Sidious sends Kylo Ren out to kill Rey, and Kylo's not able to. Obviously, Rey's fine, and she ends up going to Palpatine at the end. That's the big final thing. She finds where Palpatine is, and she goes to fight him. And when she gets there, Palpatine reveals to her he wants her to kill him, because he wants her. If she kills him, he will be able to possess her. Like, his life essence will go into her, and he will possess her, and he will be able to control her and rule from her body. And so it's like, okay, hold on. And this isn't like a lie or anything. This isn't him lying to her. He tries to get her to kill him, and when she refuses to, he gets angry. Like, he gets really pissed off that she's not doing what he's asking her to. So, if this was your plan, to have Rey kill you, then why did you send out Kylo to kill her? That doesn't make any sense to me, because there's no point in this movie where it's like even implied that somehow Kylo going out and killing her is supposed to lead her to Sidious. There's no point where where like it's revealed that this was all some part of Sidious's plan to get Rey to him. I'm just going to keep bouncing back and forth between Sidious and Palpatine. It's whatever. There's no indication at any point that he's trying to get her to come to him, and yet here we are. And she's here, and he's just like, no, I want you to kill me, strike me down so that we may rule. It's like, and I'm sitting in the theater like rubbing my head like, you ordered her to be killed. Where did that fall in your plan? What would you have done if Kylo had been successful and actually killed her? What would you have done? And then she says no. She fights him. She and Kylo. There is a bunch of bullcrap like Force rules which come out which make no sense. Palpatine actually ends up draining her and Kylo's life force to give himself more strength, which is funny. He drains their life force to give himself more strength, but it doesn't seem to hurt them. They recover from having their literal life force sucked out of them pretty quickly, but whatever, I guess. So Rey fights Palpatine's rejuvenated. He fights Rey, and Rey ends up killing him because obviously the villain dies. But for some reason, her killing him doesn't allow him to possess her. She dies after she kills him, which is another thing. The power it takes for her to kill Palpatine actually results in her dying, but I'll get to that in a minute. But the big point I'm trying to point out here is, so now you've established that her killing Palpatine will allow him to possess her, but then when she kills him, he does not possess her. I don't understand what's happening here. I don't understand why there are all these contradictions. I don't get how this happened, is the thing. Like, these are obvious contradictions I'm noticing, and I don't understand how they got past, like, anyone. I don't understand how they got into this script. Like, I'm really bad at noticing stuff like this on a first watch through. I'm one of those guys who just takes it all in. I'm like I like Transformers movies. Like, I like those movies. I know they're not good, but I like them, and I'm able to like not notice some of the very bad plot decisions in them. But this was just a movie where I was just sitting there like, how did you write this? How did you allow this to happen? It's just, I don't know, but yeah, Rey dies. I'm just gonna, it's weird. I'm just gonna keep bouncing from point to point with no transition. Rey dies, and then Kylo brings her back to life with the Force, but to bring her back to life, he has to give up his life essence to revive her, which causes him to die. Apparently now losing your life essence causes you to die. It didn't cause them. It didn't cause him to die when when Palpatine took it from him and Rey, but now giving up his life essence to bring Rey back to life does kill him. I don't know. Maybe the explanation could be it takes more life essence to bring someone back to life, whereas Palpatine was just getting more power. So I don't know. Maybe that's the explanation. But he dies, and she comes back to life, and that's sort of the end of that. They kiss. I don't understand why they would kiss. They should really hate each other, honestly. I mean, Rey should definitely hate Kylo, considering Han Solo was the closest thing she had to a father figure, and Kylo killed him in front of her. She should really hate him, honestly. I don't understand why. I don't understand why The Last Jedi set up that they kind of like each other, and I don't understand why this movie followed up on that stupid plot point and had them kiss right before Kylo died. Or Ben. He's Ben Solo now because he redeemed himself. He's not Kylo anymore. It's... I don't know. I think a lot of this could be summed up with I don't know. Another plot point that really annoyed me is when there's a scene where Rey, Finn, Poe, C-3PO, and BB-8 go to this planet called... I don't even remember the name of the planet. I'd have to look that up. But they go to this planet because they want to get... They're looking for a way... They need to wipe C-3PO's mind so that C-3PO will be able to read writing on a Sith dagger that they found, which is another long story that I need to tell to get to that particular plot point. But the point is, I'll go back and go over that in a minute because that's a problem too. That dagger. Oh my gosh, dude. But they go to this planet because C-3PO, he's a protocol droid who's programmed to know basically every language in the galaxy, but he can read the language on the Sith dagger, but his programming does not allow him to tell anyone else what the dagger says. According to him, the Senate passed some sort of bill which said that protocol droids are not allowed to read out Sith writing or something. He actually gets interrupted when he's explaining it, so it's not entirely clear, but the main thing is his programming doesn't allow him to tell the main characters what the writing on the Sith dagger says. And the writing on the Sith dagger is going to lead them to an object called the Wayfinder, which will lead them to where Palpatine is hiding. So that's why they need to know what this dagger says. And it's really convoluted. I don't understand why you wouldn't just say that C-3PO can't read the writing at all. I don't know why he has to be able to read the writing, but he's not able to say what the writing means. That seems like, just cut out the middleman, say he can't read it. But I guess then at that point, or just cut out the middleman and just let him read it and tell them where the Wayfinder is. That this movie's 2 hours and 30 minutes long. Like, it could deal with some trimming. You're not gonna really lose anything because this movie contradicts itself so much and ignores so much of its own plot that it sets up. I feel that, I don't know, cutting out that plot line. I don't think cutting out that plot line would lose it too much. And even if you did lose some vital information, it's not like that would just be a drop in the bucket at this point, honestly. A drop in the ocean. This movie, man. Anyway, they go to this planet, and when they get on this planet, they meet a character named Zori Bliss. And Zori knows Poe because it turns out Poe used to be a spice smuggler before the Resistance, and they treat it like it's this big thing, like it's so messed up that he used to be a spice smuggler. And I'm pretty sure, I know Han was a smuggler in the original trilogy. I don't know if he smuggled spice, but they treat Poe being a former smuggler like he was some sort of drug dealer or something. Like Poe's trying to keep it a secret, and when they find out, they're like, "Poe, you smuggled spice? How dare you?" I'm like, I don't have context for why this is bad. I guess it's bad. I guess it's bad that Poe used to smuggle spice. But anyway, she finds them and she tries to kill Poe because Poe betrayed her gang, the spice smuggling gang that she's a part of, when he left them to join the resistance. And there's literally, she has a gun to his head and she literally says almost word for word, I want his brains splattered all over the snow, or something like that, because it's snowing or something. Maybe it's snow, I don't know. I thought Crate was a snow planet, but it turns out it was a salt planet. So maybe it's raining salt on this planet. I don't know. But she says something almost word for word, like, I want his brain splattered all over the ground. And not 5 minutes later, in the subsequent scene, as they're reprogramming C3PO's brain, she just said, she goes off with Poe into like a little private area, and she's like, hey, do you want to run away together? And I was like, I'm sorry, what? You were literally just saying in the previous scene that you want to see his brains splattered over the ground. You were being unnecessarily graphic with how much you wanted him dead, and now you're just asking, like, hey, you want to run away? Maybe elope a bit? It's like, this is sudden. But I don't know. She gives him a little medallion, a First Order medallion, so that he and the other characters can infiltrate a First Order ship. And she makes a point of saying, like, she's been trying to get this for years so that she can, because I don't even remember. I've already forgotten why she had this, but it's something like this has enough value that if she sold it, she could get off planet and like go off on her own. She wouldn't have to work as a smuggler anymore or something like that. And she gives the medallion to Poe so that she just gives it away to him so that he can use it to infiltrate a First Order ship. It's like, so you wanted him dead 5 minutes ago, and now something has happened in the last 5 minutes. I say something because nothing has been shown to change between them. She got beat up by Rey, and then she and Rey were like, you know what? I like you. You go, girl. Zori Bliss is a girl. They were both like, she got into a fight with Rey, and Rey beat her, and they were both like, man, I like you. So she likes Rey for some reason, but she has no reason to like She has no reason to like Poe, but she wants to go off with him somewhere in elope, and then when he doesn't do that, she gives him this incredibly valuable medallion, which I'm pretty sure she said she had worked for years to get. And then she shows up at the final battle later with the Emperor's fleet. She shows up with a bunch of people to help the Resistance. It's like, wow. I don't know what you and Poe did in that 5 minutes that we didn't see, but man, it really changed your mind, because you've done a complete 180. But it's another big problem. I'm trying to remember. I'm literally forgetting this movie, like, as I'm trying to recap it. I mean, I guess those were the biggest things that I had a problem with, those plot points. Oh, another thing is Princess Leia. Obviously, well, I guess not obviously, maybe some people don't know this. Obviously, it's very sad. Carrie Fisher, Leia's actress, died right before The Last Jedi came out, so she had literal no time to film any scenes for this movie. But they need her in it. Obviously, she's the only member of the original three, Luke, Han, and Leia, whose character hasn't been killed off, so they need her in this. So what they did is, I know I read about this, they took deleted scenes from The Force Awakens, which Carrie Fisher had shot as Leia, and they put those in this movie so that she could appear in it. And it's so obvious. It's so obvious that that's what they did in this movie, because there are scenes which are just completely out of place. Like, there's one, it made me almost like laugh from how like just odd it felt because of the way they had to edit around it. Because obviously these are scenes they shot for a completely different story. So they've basically got to write the scenes she appears in around those old scenes so that they can fit in. There's a scene where she's training Rey as a Jedi. It's established in this movie that Leia was trained by Luke, which is how she has Force powers. So she's training Rey now. And there's one point where Rey gets frustrated and she tries to stop training, and she walks up to Leia and she says like, "I can't do it. I think this is impossible." And just cuts to a close up of Leia, just like sort of staring off screen, and she's like, "Nothing is impossible." And then just cuts back to Rey. Like Rey walked up to her like pissed off. She was like, "I can't do it. I'm beginning to think this is impossible. I want to give up." It like smash cut to Leia. She's like, "Nothing's impossible." And then smashes to Rey and she's like this, "Nothing's impossible. All right, I'll try again." It's like, it's like, oh wow, this was all you had to work with, huh? I feel bad for you. I really do. It really is a sad situation to have, uh, to have to try and find a way to shoot around Carrie Fisher's death. It's sad that she died, but man, at this rate, it really would have just been better to say that she died between the last movie and this one, because they just can't make it work with Leia in this movie. Like, it just doesn't feel right. There's another part where after they find out that the Emperor is still alive, it just cuts to Leia just sort of saying to her, she's like, "He's been behind this the whole time, everything," which it fits into the scene, but there's just something. I'd have to rewatch the scene again. I'm already sort of forgetting the specifics of it, but there was something about the way it was shot. It's like, obviously she's not reacting to the news that Palpatine's alive. This was just some random clip they had of her talking about someone, I guess Snoke, because Snoke was the big bad when they were making Force Awakens, like being behind everything. And it's just really does feel awkward. There was another scene that was sort of like the "nothing's impossible" scene with Rey, where literally it was weird. Oh, I don't remember the specifics of it, but a rebel pilot walks up to her and like reports something to her, and her response has almost nothing to do with what he said. I don't remember the exact specifics of it, but it literally feels like she's having a different conversation because she's not addressing what he said, and it feels odd, and it really does suffer. There's nothing they could do about it. This is a problem with the writing in the movie that they just couldn't help, because there was no easy fix to putting Leia in this movie. Obviously the best fix is you just either recast her, which obviously that would have been controversial to recast Princess Leia, or just not put her in it, which probably would have been at this point the best decision. This this movie also tries to explain the origins of Snoke and who Rey's and where Rey comes from, because obviously J.J. Abrams wrote Force Awakens and this movie, so obviously he had ideas in Force Awakens which were not paid off in The Last Jedi. It's already been stated by people who were involved in The Last Jedi, including Daisy Ridley, who plays Rey, that JJ gave the writer for that movie, Rian Johnson, like basically a rough draft of his ideas for what a sequel to The Force Awakens should do, and Rian just didn't use them. He just tossed them over his shoulder and wrote his own movie. So obviously JJ had plans, and Rian did not go along with those plans, and you can tell in this movie that JJ is trying to sort of pick up the pieces. Snoke's origin is explained in a little throwaway line as Kylo is going to meet Palpatine. Palpatine tells him that he created Snoke, and then you just see a little vat of little Snoke, of like half-made Snokes in it. So apparently, it's not. This isn't a thing like Palpatine clone, like Snoke was a clone of something, which I saw in like some early reactions to the movie, that Snoke was a clone. It's not that Palpatine cloned him. He literally created Snoke. He created like an artificial alien. And then for some reason, he's creating more in a vat. I don't know why he needs more Snokes at this point, but which obviously I don't think that was planned from the start. I don't think that was something that was planned at all. I think that was something JJ had to come up with after Snoke got killed off in the last movie. Because if you look at the way Snoke is used in the previous movies, I think it's supposed to be implied that Palpatine is also controlling Snoke like a puppet, because Snoke is just an artificially created being. And like Snoke, the things Snoke does in the previous movies do not work at all with Palpatine's current plan. Because Palpatine's plan in this movie is he creates a fleet of of Star Destroyers, which are all armed with Death Star cannons, which that's ridiculous in and of itself. Like these are literally cannons that fit on the bottom of a Death Star. They're super tiny, and they blow up planets somehow. In which, I mean, maybe it's cool in theory, but I mean, we've been joking for so long about how they just keep going back to the Death Star, and now it's just like Death Star times 500 because he has an entire fleet of Death Star cannons on Star Destroyers. But Palpatine has been building this like fleet of ships this entire time, and if he's building this fleet of ships with Death Star cannons on them, I don't know why he would have the First Order and Snoke build Starkiller Base. Because Starkiller Base is just a planet-sized thing which can shoot 5 Death Star lasers at once. Palpatine's creating like 500 Death Star lasers, which are attached to different ships so they can go anywhere in the galaxy to destroy any planet they want. So that seems like a much better idea if you're Palpatine. I don't know why he's wasting resources making one giant planet like Starkiller Base. Like that doesn't make any sense. And especially Starkiller Base draws sort of the attention of the galaxy. They're like, oh man, the First Order is creating giant planet-killing weapons. Like you don't just don't make Starkiller Base and the Resistance never. Don't make Starkiller Base and people just won't notice you. Like building that planet-sized thing attracted a lot of unnecessary attention, which if you hadn't built that, people wouldn't take the First Order as seriously as a threat, and you could have taken all those resources and put them towards your Death Star armada. I think they're called Death Star destroyers. You could have put all the resources to your Death Star destroyers, and instead of having 500 Death Star destroyers, you'd have like 2 billion, because I'm sure a planet-sized Death Star equals like billions, if not billions, of Death Star destroyers. So I don't like their plans don't match up. There's also the fact that Snoke tried to get Kylo to kill Rey in the Last Jedi. He was literally going to watch as Kylo killed Rey, which is established in this movie. Palpatine wants her alive so that she can kill him. So that's another time where it's like, if Kylo actually had killed Rey, what would you have done then? And it's established in this film that Kylo has known about Rey her entire life. The reason Rey was put on Jakku was to keep her protected from Palpatine, to hide her from him. So he's been looking for her this entire time. This isn't some deal where it's like Palpatine tried to kill her in the previous movies, then he realized he could use her, and so now he wants her alive. He's wanted her this entire time. It's just he's wanted her alive to kill him this entire time. So it's just for some reason he's just been trying to kill her too. I don't know, man. This movie doesn't even respect its own trilogy. Like, it's not just that it contradicts the first 6; it contradicts the previous 2 also, Force Awakens and Last Jedi. Oh man, this movie's not good. I've said this so many times. It is not. It's not good. There's a scene where it's implied that Rey accidentally kills Chewbacca, which that's a whole thing. Chewbacca gets captured by the First Order, and he's shown being put in a transport ship. There's literally one transport ship. There is one transport ship, and Finn watches Chewbacca get put in this transport ship, and then this ship starts to take off, and Rey grabs it with the Force to hold it there, and then Kylo, who is also there, like, uses the Force to try and like get the ship away from her. And the reason Rey's trying to get the ship back is obvious because Chewbacca's on there, but Chewbacca also has the Sith dagger, which I mentioned earlier, which they need to translate to find the Wayfinder, to find Palpatine. That's another thing. There are so many things they need to find Palpatine. They need to go to a planet to find Lando, so that Lando can tell them where the Sith ship is, and when they go to the Sith ship, they find a dagger in there, which has writing on it, which will send them to the Wayfinder, which will then send them to Palpatine. It's like zigzagging plot, like all over the place. It's like, I'm sure you could have streamlined this down a bit. I'm sure you could have streamlined it somehow, but either way, that's why they're looking for the dagger. And Chewbacca has the dagger, and Chewbacca's getting kidnapped. So she wants Chewbacca back, and she also wants the dagger back. And she's trying to keep the ship there. And then Kylo starts trying to get the ship away, and she starts getting pissed off because she's mad at Kylo, and she gets so mad that she accidentally shoots Force lightning out of her fingers and blows up the ship. And she's like, it's this big deal. So like, oh my gosh, I accidentally killed Chewbacca. And then in the next scene, it's revealed Chewbacca's still alive. He got brought to Kylo's personal first order ship where they're keeping him a prisoner. And I was just like, I know for a fact that there was only one transport like in that general area where they were fighting Kylo and the First Order people. There was only one transport which they saw Chewbacca get on, and then they saw that ship get destroyed. So I don't understand. It's like some throwaway line of dialogue says that he was in a different transport or something, and it's like, I'm like, that doesn't, another transport? There was definitely only one. There was definitely only one, but I don't know. That's another thing. This movie's explanation for who Rey is, because you do need an explanation for who Rey is. I know some people wanted her to be like that she was a nobody. She needs to be someone. There needs to be an explanation for why she's so powerful, because she is very powerful. She is too powerful to be a nobody. She in The Force Awakens, she literally starts using mind tricks on people without knowing what a mind trick is. Like she's told that the Force is real. She didn't even know it was real. She's told it's real, and then like hours later, she uses a mind trick on someone. She's never been told what a mind trick is. She's just been told that the Force is real, but she's using mind tricks. She's able to force pull a lightsaber to her. Remember, Luke trained with Obi-Wan as a Jedi in A New Hope for like a few days, and even after he trained with Obi-Wan, and training with Obi-Wan just gave him enough force ability so that when his sight is taken away, like when he doesn't have that targeting computer to see where he's aiming his X-Wing, he's able to use the Force to sense where he should fire the torpedoes to destroy the Death Star. So that's as much as he learns training with Obi-Wan. Empire set 2 years later, so I assume he had been training himself for a bit between those years, but like without any formal training, without Yoda or Obi-Wan to help him, even with 2 years knowing that the Force is real and trying to get better at it, he's barely able to pull his lightsaber to him from the snow. Rey, like literally less than a day, no training, mind trick, Force pull lightsaber to her, beats Kylo in a fight. Then Last Jedi, Luke doesn't train her in the Force at all. He's just grumpy in The Last Jedi and doesn't want to do anything. But she, at the end of The Last Jedi, she gets into that Force fight with Kylo, the Force tug of war with the lightsaber, and she, I guess she technically beats him because Kylo gets knocked out and she doesn't. And then on Crate, she lifts up all those boulders that are blocking the exit to the Resistance rebels. It's the same thing. She lifts up all those rocks blocking the entrance to the Resistance base so that they can get out. Literal boulders, like huge boulders bigger than humans. She's just lifting them up with no problem. Luke, after training with Yoda for days, like wasn't able to lift up an X-Wing, but Rey's able to lift up like the equivalent of an X-Wing, all these different boulders with no training whatsoever. Like, there needs to be an explanation for that. I don't have a problem with her being that powerful, but there needs to be an explanation. There needs to be an explanation for why she's that latently powerful. And this movie sort of does explain it. I still don't like that she can do all this without training. You need to establish that she had training. I had a theory for why she was this powerful, which I'd actually like to make a video talking about what my theory for Rey was. But either way, I had a theory. It wasn't correct. But what this movie reveals about her is that she's Palpatine's granddaughter, which I guess is why she has so much Force abilities. And that's why Palpatine specifically wants her to be the one to kill him so he can possess her, because he wants to rule like as a descendant of his or something. I don't know why it has to be her. But I guess there's nothing specifically wrong with her being Palpatine's granddaughter. There's nothing wrong with it. I can't say that it's a bad decision. It's not what I would have done, but I don't like the idea of knowing that Palpatine like had kids, because I don't like the idea of knowing that Palpatine I don't like knowing that Palpatine had sex. I don't know. I don't really have an explanation for why I don't like that. I don't like it. I prefer to think that Palpatine was like the Jedi, that he was a celibate, that he never had kids. That's just a personal preference I have, but I can't outright say that it's a bad idea. But I also don't know. I guess the timelines don't really need to match up. Palpatine could have had kids at any point in his life, but either either way, I guess I don't understand why Palpatine's son wouldn't have been evil like him, because it's established that Palpatine's son and Rey's mother hid Rey from Palpatine because they didn't want him like using her for his plans. I'm like, why didn't Palpatine's son turn out as evil as he did? I feel like Palpatine's pretty good at corrupting people. He corrupted Anakin. I feel like if he was responsible for raising a son, the son would turn out just as bad as he is. So I guess that's something I don't understand. I don't understand how all this works out. I feel like if Palpatine has a son, that son is definitely going to be as evil as his dad. That apple is not going to fall far from the tree. But either way, trying to think. I think those are the main issues I have with it. I'm glad I got to get some of this out. Another thing. I just remembered it right now. Han Solo shows up as a hallucination to convince Kylo Ren to go back to the light side. And I know, according to spoilers, according to leaks that came out before the movie came out, Han was originally supposed to appear as a Force ghost, which maybe those leaks were incorrect. I'm not sure, but it sort of feels like that's what he was supposed to do. There's a part where he touches Kylo's cheek, where he sort of caresses his cheek. It's like, well, we've established in this movie that Force ghosts can touch stuff, so I don't know. Maybe that was a thing. I don't know. I do know I don't like Han reappearing as a hallucination or anything like that. I think hallucination is just kind of a dumb thing to do anyway. Have Kylo hallucinate that Khan is. Why did I say Khan? Mixed up Kylo and Han. Whatever. I don't like the idea of Kylo just imagining that Han is there talking to him. Really, and I don't like the idea of. I don't like the idea of it. This is another thing which goes back to Anakin. I think Anakin should have been the one who redeemed Kylo, because it was set up in Force Awakens. Kylo is constantly praying to Darth Vader's helmet, like grandfather, I'm not evil like you are, so help me be evil, grandfather, please. I want to be a Sith like you were. It's like Anakin. Where this goes back to where have the Force Ghosts been? Anakin, where have you been this entire time? Your grandson has just been like trying to be evil like you. Why didn't you just show up at any point and we're just like, hey man, I don't know how you missed this, but I stopped being a Sith because being a Sith sucks. I don't know. That seemed like a very clear setup to me that Anakin was going to be the one who convinced Kylo to turn good again. Kylo's personal role model, Darth Vader, would finally show up to him and be like, "Hey, I don't know if you flunked history or something. I don't know if you missed it, but I stopped being a Sith. I went back to the Jedi because the Jedi are better. So maybe you should take that into consideration. Maybe you should think about the fact that I did I didn't think the Sith were good. I didn't like being with them. I redeemed myself. You should redeem yourself. I don't like. That's another thing. I guess a lot of my problems with some of the decisions in this movie come back to Anakin, because there's a very clear role. There is a very obvious role to give Anakin in this story. Redeem his grandson and take out Palpatine, and you don't give either of those to him. And redeeming Kylo is one which almost feels a bit more egregious to me, because obviously it's very important that Anakin's arc stays intact. That's very important to me, that you don't just give his arc and his big payoff of killing Palpatine to someone else. That's why I really hate the ending of this movie. I really hate that you gave that payoff to Rey, but I mean, I guess to be fair to you, that whole arc, Anakin's arc as the Chosen One and his arc of redeeming himself, were both things set up in different movies by George Lucas, of different filmmakers. So I guess it's a bit easier for JJ to ignore the work of someone else when telling the story, but But Anakin redeeming Kylo is something that was set up in JJ's other film. So I don't understand why JJ didn't pay that off, because I mean, I guess you could argue that he never explicitly set up that Kylo, or that and Anakin would be the one who redeemed Kylo. He never explicitly put in anything like that, but it seems pretty clear to me, if Kylo wants to be like Darth Vader, and for some reason he just seems to have missed the memo that Darth Vader turned good again, that seems like a pretty clear setup to me that at some point Anakin is going to show up and be like, "Hey, stop being an idiot and just return to the good side, because the good side is good. It's in the name, the light side of the Force, you know. Stop following the darkness and be good." But I mean, at that point, even if he did have Anakin be the one who redeemed Kylo, at that point you still have the issue of, where was Anakin for all those years when Kylo was falling to the dark side? Were you just hanging with Qui-Gon? Were you and Qui-Gon just hanging around together, watching the entire galaxy fall apart, like eating popcorn like it's a movie or something? I don't know. So I guess that would have been a problem even if Anakin had been the one who redeemed Kylo. It still would have been like, man, Anakin, thanks for finally showing up. But I think that's all I have to say about this movie. I really think, looks like it took me almost an hour to talk about this, but I mean, I had a lot of thoughts about it. I don't like it at all. This was most definitely not a good end to the Skywalker saga. Actually, you know what? Speaking of Skywalkers, I guess I just talk about this. I'll just hit it pretty quick. At the end of the movie, Rey buries Luke and Leia's lightsabers at the Skywalker farm homestead on Tatooine, and a woman sees her and she's like, "Hey, people don't come by this homestead anymore. Who are you? No one ever comes to this place anymore." She's like, "My name's Rey." She's like, "Rey who?" She's like, "Rey Skywalker." It's like, okay, so she's the Skywalker in the title, Rise of Skywalker. I mean, here's the thing. In a perfect world, the idea of Palpatine's descendant rejecting him and deciding to call him or herself Skywalker, identifying herself with her grandfather's enemies, in an ideal world, that's actually a really cool arc. The problem is it's not earned, because the idea of Rey being a Palpatine was not foreshadowed in any of the previous movies. It was foreshadowed that Rey was someone. I do not think at all that it was foreshadowed that she was a Palpatine. But either way, I don't feel like this was properly foreshadowed, and I don't feel like it was this payoff isn't earned, because she doesn't have a strong relationship with any of the Skywalkers. Like, all she really did was argue with Luke in The Last Jedi. Luke obviously did not want her around. It's established in this movie that she's got a strong relationship with Leia, but we didn't get to see that relationship build on screen. So I don't really feel the connection there. So her choosing to identify with the Skywalker family does not feel earned at all. So that's a problem I have with it. And in an ideal world with better writing, that could have been a really good moment where the descendant of Palpatine is like, I identify with the Skywalkers. That is my family. That is who I choose to like declare allegiance with. But it doesn't, the payoff just falls really flat in this movie because it just doesn't feel earned. They haven't really laid the groundwork. So that's how I feel about this movie. It's really not good. It's just a not very good movie on its own, but then when you compare it with the rest of the movies, it's like, oh no, this isn't just a bad movie. This is a movie which really like goes against the previous ones, which is a big part of the reason I hate it. So that's all I have to say. I didn't like this movie at all. Bye.